Well, it's 9/27/2016. We had a little shot of rain last night, nothing major. Maybe half inch, maybe an inch. Not really sure. Helpful for sure, but we need a lot more, and we have more in the forecast this week, so maybe we'll start replenishing our low water supply. Meantime, I've been busy tending the sweet corn and harvesting that, and tending potatoes and harvesting that. And so we finally got them all out of the ground, and with the drought, and I didn't have enough nutrition in the budget this year from all the other infrastructure upgrades I did. We didn't get as much as I wanted, but we still did pretty good. Plenty of potatoes to eat for the winter, and I'm not complaining. These are all blue. These are blue fleshed and blue skin potato. These are russets. These are Kennebecs, Yukon Gold, more russets, Pontiac, Adirondack Red, more russets, more russets. So yeah, did okay. I'm very happy, and that's not all of them. I've been eating some, and I gave some to my my family to celebrate my uncle's birthday, along with some sweet corn. Anyway, things are going well, and growing well, and we had a potential frost night the other night, but we dodged it. It came out 34 degrees, so we beat it by a couple degrees. I had the irrigation ready to go to protect the corn, but I was hoping not to have to do that, and I got real lucky and didn't have to do that. A friend of mine had asked me about sweet corn pollination, and I know I've talked about some of the pollination stuff, but I haven't really gotten into the detail of spacing, and I think I'm going to do that briefly. Corn is best planted in blocks of 4 rows or more, so that when crosswinds come across, if pollen is blown off of this plant and it doesn't make it to the bottom of that plant, it can fall over and fall to the bottom of this plant. In real high winds, it could possibly go from this plant down through here, missing this plant, and catch the 3rd plant. And in very high winds, it could catch the 4th row. So this is why typically sweet corn is planted in block rows of 4 or more in width. I plant 3-foot spacing between rows right now. I've looked at reducing that, but I really like that spacing because I can get my tiller between it for a weed killing cultivation a couple weeks after they're up, or even a month in. You can go down as low as 2 foot. Obviously corn variety has a huge factor on that. The blue corn, if I don't plant that at least 3 feet apart, it ends up not having enough room, and it'll actually shade out the ground a lot more than this will here. Like you can see, there's some shade here, but there's also dappled sunlight down through. On the blue corn, which is much taller, that grows anywhere between 10 and 15 feet tall and puts out a lot more leaves, and it'll shade it right out. In fact, in the summertime, it's a great spot to hide out in the shade when you're out weeding and get a break from the sun. My cats used to love it too. Anyway, so blocks of 4, sweet corn, typically 8 to 12 inch spacing. I'm a big fan of a little more space than a little less, although this year I did do approximately 8 inch spacing between plants on the sweet corn. That also helps ensure pollination, but it also ensures enough space for the corn not to crowd each other and not be able to get enough light or nutrition. So my recommendation is 3 foot between rows at a maximum. You can go as low as 2 foot. I would not go lower than that. 3 foot's a nice space. This is 3 foot here, and you can see I can walk up this row with relative ease without interfering with the plants or without breaking leaves off like you would do if they were a little closer together. You'd end up cracking leaves like that, and that's something you want to avoid because that's where all your sunlight comes from. Those are your solar panels for your plants. So I think I've covered everything that my friend was asking about pollination. And if you don't get good pollination, you won't fill, your corn kernels won't fill out. All these silks won't get pollinated, and that corresponds to seeds that don't get pollinated. And so you'll have corn with like some seed on it, and then some of the seeds won't be filled out, and that's one thing you want to avoid. So I hope that covers it. Anyway, it's a beautiful day here in upstate New York in the end of September. The sun is out full strength. There's no haze in the sky, and it feels great. I did a bunch of work in the greenhouse last night, so I'm going to take you over there next, and we'll have a look at the greenhouse. I know it's a darn mess out here right now, but I had to pull everything out of the greenhouse so I could do a clean rebuild and rearrange and increase the efficiency of my space usage. The last couple of years was kind of a testing run to make sure I could sustain through cold winters and handle weather and winds and snow and all the tough environmental factors that make it so difficult to grow here at 42 degrees north in upstate New York, or not really upstate, in the mid-Hudson Valley region. Anyway, a friend of mine knows an old German lady who has a whole bunch of strawberries, and she was clearing out that bed, and she offered for us to come take them. In about 10 minutes, we filled this 5-gallon bucket with strawberry plants, and we had to stop. She certainly could have filled probably 50 of those buckets with plants. It's amazing how many strawberries this lady had. Anyway, so I brought them home last night. I mixed up some fresh soil for them, and I transplanted them in here. These are planted very close together, too tight. But my goal eventually is to take some of this white piping and either do vertical or horizontal beds filled with soil, and then we'll put the strawberries into those. And that'll do a couple things. That'll make it really easy to water them. It'll keep them contained, and the white of the pipe will reflect more light, so that even when the light hits the pipe, it'll come back up underneath the plant and boost the total light available to them. That's one thing we have a lot of trouble with this time of year in these northern latitudes is light. We have much shorter daylight hours, and then when you go in a greenhouse like this, which is double shielded, you lose a lot of the light that's transmitted. And I can kind of show you that by, if you take a look at the intensity of the sunlight out here on the ground outside the greenhouse, and then that same exposure in here, you can see there's a vast difference in the amount of light coming through. Now this plastic here is greenhouse plastic. It's supposed to be, I think, 92% light transmission, or 94, something like that. It's a pretty high light transmission plastic. It does have some smoke residue and some dirt that's built up over the couple of years, and I have to go in and kind of rinse that off at some point. We'll get to that, but I just wanted to point out a couple of those things about it. Anyway, I did some rearranging in here. I'll bring you back in officially, and it's starting to come together nice. It feels really good to walk in here and see two big green walls of plants growing. And it's been nice working in here as the evenings are getting chilled off. It stays nice in here. I stuck that fan in here finally, now that I've done all my testing with fanless operation. That is possible, it can be done, but running that fan just on low up on the bench, just circulating the air in here, makes a much nicer, more uniform air temperature in the evening when the furnace is on. Anyway, so I transplanted some peppers in here maybe 4 or 5 days ago, and they're a cherry pepper and a cayenne pepper and a King Arthur pepper, and I plan to propagate those out next spring and get pure seed from them by isolating them somewhere out in the field next spring, so they won't get cross-pollinated and we'll have pure seed. Meantime, over the winter, I'm going to encourage them and nourish them, and we'll see how they do. That jalapeno plant, or pair of plants actually in the back, was taken in, that was growing outdoors last year in the ground. I dug them up in the fall, put them in this bin. Over the winter, they produced some jalapenos, which were really enjoyable in the cold season. And then over the summer, they went crazy and really produced. And now they're back in here. everything's been a little deficient on nutrient. I gave them a foliar drench the other night, and they're starting to come back, but you can see there's a little bit of yellow in the plants here from the deficiency. Ginger is doing well, mixed in with the chamomile, and well, hopefully we'll have a decent ginger yield this year, and more to plant for next year. I should point out that this whole area here, in case you don't remember, there was a fixed bench that I had installed here, so I could set plants on it and stuff underneath it, but I found it was very difficult to manage this space like that, so I ended up taking the bench out for now, and I'll probably do some hanging stuff from the upper part of this, but I'm also looking at doing the strawberries, maybe 2 or 3 of those pipes worth of strawberries up on these upper support brackets, and that way they can drain from watering well, and they'll be up in good light and up out of the way. So that's that. This whole area over here is going to be cleaned out. I might pull this shelf out and make this space open for plants also. I mean, the idea of the greenhouse is to have plants in it, and while there is some function to having benches for repotting and for working with soils, it definitely needs some efficiency improvements, which I'm working on this year. And then once I get all that straightened out, I'll figure out where my thermal mass water tanks are going to go around here, and they'll come in here, and I'll probably cover them with plywood and let the plywood act as shelving so plants can go on them, so they don't occupy more space than we want, because those tanks can take a lot of space up pretty quick. I have to point out a friend of mine who's actually in charge of a greenhouse company out in the Midwest. He just took that job a couple years ago. We had discussed propagating Meyer lemons from cuttings, and all the literature that we looked up said that you really have to use I believe it was gibberellic acid, and it was a higher concentration. It was like a greenhouse nursery concentration. It was very hard to get. So we opted to go from seed, and I will say that all of these lemon trees here all came from seed from that mother plant there that was given to my mom by a friend of hers, and I'm in charge of its care. But I did take some cuts this spring, and we have 2, well really 4 survivors that came through without any gibberellic acid at all. That was just an experiment I thought I would do since I was doing some pruning. I figured, why not take some cuts? And they seem to have come through, and I should say I've given these very minimal care. Normally when I take cuts or clones of a plant, I give them extensive care and make sure that they're comfortable and watered at the right amount and have the right nutrients available. And these I was kind of careless with, but they came through, so I'm impressed with that. And it's encouraging to see that it can be done without hormones. I think that's everything for the greenhouse for now. And I think that's it for this video. So thanks for watching the Farmacy Seeds Network.